Good evening, everyone. My name is Catherine Winkler. I'm a senior program manager at Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper. And I'm also the project manager for our Hyde Park restoration project, the current Hyde Park restoration project. Is anyone familiar with Waterkeeper? Well, not the staff. Thank you. I'm just going to give a little background on who Waterkeeper is, and then I'll turn it over to our consultant, John, from EECOM, who will give a more in-depth presentation on the project itself and our anticipated designs, and we'll see the boards in the back. And then when that's over, we will have questions and answers. This is being recorded, so we'll have it on our website. If you want to refresh anything and send us more comments, that's great. And then at the end, we'll be here for a while, and we can go back and look at the designs. We really want everyone's feedback on really what you want to see at these different sites. So just a quick overview of Waterkeeper. So Waterkeeper has been around for over 35 years. We protect the water, we restore the water, we connect people to water, and we inspire. Who we are. We have a whole list of professionals within our office that are working every single day to protect and restore Western New York's waterways. We have naturalists, biologists, and planners. So we are taking projects from our conception all the way to implementation within our one organization. Where we work, so we just recently expanded our geography all the way down to the Pennsylvania border. So on the right-hand side is a map of all the watersheds. Pennsylvania is a very solid line when we go all the way out the Niagara River streets. Just some of our initiatives that we work on, we break it up into different pillars, and our teams are focused on those, and the way that we operate are based on water quality protection, waterway access, community engagement, climate and coastal resiliency, and then we have a separate Gill Creek because that's its own animal, so we put that one separately. But you'll see as we go through this project that our initiatives cover 5 of the 6 initiatives are really built into this project. With the community engagement, we're doing the water quality protection, so we do all of our different initiatives, which is so water quality protection, just a little overview of what that looks like. It's really meant to protect pollution, protect what we have that is left, do the daily and weekly and monthly monitoring of water quality, conserve land, and protect our drinking water. Waterway access, this is public access, creating connections for people who live along waterways but did not ever have access to their waterfront, or that the waterfront properties were privately owned and they were not accessible to people. So mostly for focusing on the Buffalo Blueway along the Buffalo River with my project for the last few years, and really working with underserved communities to make sure that everybody has equal access to their waterfront. Community engagement is huge for Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper, and you might know us in the news every spring when we do our spring cleanups, and we pick up trash with thousands of volunteers at all of our different sites. But in addition to that, we do education. We have a Gill program. We are constantly working with high school students and middle school students who are on our watershed, because they are our next generation. They are the new stewards as we move forward. We always are looking for volunteers to work our events or come out and do some cleanups. We love engaging with the public. So if we aren't engaging with the public, we don't know what the public wants to see on their waterfront. So those are great opportunities to do so. Climate and coastal resiliency, this is a huge one. As climate is shifting, I guess you could say, our storms are getting more intense and more frequent, and we really need to make sure that our waterfront and our waterfront properties are safe against any sort of storm impacts. So we have a coastal and climate resiliency initiative at all the way from the planning level. We're doing modeling of the lakes and the streams, all the way up to implementing projects that will protect our infrastructure and our just our general communities. So that was the update on Waterkeeper. Now for this project alone, there's been a lot of work at Hyde Park that Waterkeeper has already done. So we did a living shoreline project about 7-10 years ago, and that one is doing amazingly well. So that was put in, we converted some lawn area into a nice living shoreline area, and just it's thriving at this point. About 2 years ago, we did a green infrastructure project, and we started it just a little bit north of where we are now. North. That Emily Root, over there, spearheaded, so that's a really great project. We've done conceptual master plans for Hyde Park, so we are very familiar with the park, and we've had a lot of community input, and we want your input tonight too. So that's really where we're going. So, Waterkeeper received funding, I think this is on the next slide, sorry. Yeah, the funding source. So Waterkeeper received funding from the host community funds through the NIPA settlement from the city in order to develop designs for 3 project sites along Hyde Park and Gill Creek. So a lot of times people ask, why are we using money for restoration projects and not to fix my road, or not to deal with this issue that we're having over here. These monies are specifically set aside for restoration projects such as this. So those funding cannot be used for different purposes. And then just the goal of this project that John is going to so nicely walk us through shortly. We are looking to restore 2,300 linear feet of shoreline along 3 project areas and up to 7 acres of habitat. Our goal is really to increase habitat, but also to improve water quality as much as we can. We know that HABs are a major issue within this creek system and the lake, so we're going to work to try to do that as well. Any questions on that before I turn it over to what you're here to see? Perfect. And we'll want to snack before John. Okay. All right.
Thank you much.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you all for coming. First things, I'd like to thank the Waterkeeper who hired us, paying our bills, so thank you very much to you guys. But really, I want to thank you all for coming out on a sultry summer's day. As Catherine indicated, there was some goals and the X number of linear feet of shoreline restoration, habitat creation. And if we were in the middle of nowhere, that's easy to do. But in a park, you have to balance a lot of public uses, public interest, as well as do some good science. And I think I have an idea how to do that. But I certainly, to reiterate what Catherine and her colleagues have said, we really want your input. We're at the early stage of the design right now, so we can move things around. And this is really the time, if you see something on the boards back there and you think, hey, John, this is a very good idea, but maybe you might want to move this over here, or you can't do this over here because of X, Y, and Z. Fine, let me know. We'll have to accommodate. So, as Catherine said, I work for AECOM. AECOM is an international multidisciplinary engineering consulting firm. We have offices, hundreds of offices worldwide, a number of offices here in New York, one office right over here in Buffalo. What I do at AECOM, I wear several hats. I've been there for over 30 years. But basically, I lead all the natural resources and environmental permitting work in New York and New Jersey. And for this particular project, I'm the project management. Right, that's not me. Whoops, this was time to get fingers the size of knockboard sheet, trying to play this full button. I hope this is the next slide, so we can go with that. So, what I'm going to have in this presentation, and I'm not going to draw on, I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the stressors that are affecting the lake. I'm going to talk about some of the restoration components we considered it, why we considered it, and I'm also going to explain what some of these components are. So if I throw out a word like stacked rock wall or wetland bench, you understand what that is and why we're using it. And then finally, we'll talk about the 3 sites. And again, just to reiterate, probably I'm saving the best for last, bullets right there. Again, your public input is key, especially at this stage of the project. So I'd really like to hear from you all. So I'm not going to belabor the point, but obviously there's been a number of harmful algal blooms in the lake. It was started, we decided back in 2016, and I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but you're not alone here at Hyde Park Lake. They're happening throughout New York State. I've been working on them on a number of other lakes throughout the state as well. In fact, the governor put together a commission back around 2017 to really start tackling these things. But there's a particular problem here at Hyde Park, and certainly last year, I believe, if memory serves, you had the most amount of days of reported HABs, harmful algal blooms, in one given year. So, and of course, there's all the negative side effects that happen with that. You know, there's a public warnings, you really shouldn't fish, you can't go swimming, you can't go boating. So, let's see what we can do to combat that. So why is the system vulnerable? You know, why didn't we have harmful algal blooms in World War II, in the Korean War, in the Eisenhower administration? Why now? Well, it's probably a synergistic effect of several reasons. First, you know, the Hyde Park Lake isn't really a true lake. It was created in the 1930s. We believe that dam was built as part of the WPA program. And basically, you flooded the stream valve. Nothing wrong with doing that. The problem is, there are two forks of the Gill Creek, what we affectionately call the West Fork and the East Fork, because one's on the west side and one's on the east side, that feed Gill Creek on the northern side of the lake. If you look at where these forks travel through, they go through agricultural areas, industrial areas, train marshalling yards, golf courses, a number of areas where they start picking up nutrients, right? And they take these nutrients, they're flowing down the creek at a nice little velocity, and then they hit the lake, and the water slows dramatically. And now you start getting a buildup of these nutrients. You add in climate change with warmer waters, you add in the fact that there's not a lot of flow and velocity in the lake, and as well as some other efforts, some remedial efforts back in the lake that I'll talk about in a moment, and you have this perfect palette, if you will, if you wanted to paint an HAB picture. And here's a photo. The photos on the left, one's from 1938, one's from 2024. And you can just see how the city of Niagara Falls is alone. You just look at all the houses on the west side of the lake versus, you know, pre-World War II versus what it is now. And this same level of development is somewhat similar throughout the rest of this watershed. So some of you may remember back in 1980, there was a remediation effort done because there's some other company that did some things upstream. And what they did is they dredged most of the lake bottom. They wanted to get some contaminated sediments out. They also built some retention ponds just north of the golf course to reduce some sedimentation. All well and good, well intentioned. What we think happened, and so to the right is a photo from 1979. This is Weston Avenue, which is right up there. And on the photo on the left is one I took this spring. And what you can see is the complete absence of wetland vegetation along the banks and into the water body. Looking at historical photos, talking to a few folks that have been in the area for decades, they remember these large marshes up in the forks. They remember there was a lot more wetland type plants along the shoreline, and now there's really nothing. Every now and then you might find one loose cat, maybe not a cat tail. You might find one or two little plants by themselves, but not an extensive marsh like that. Now, the question is, what does that have to do with the price of beans in Mexico? Well, marshes are adept at pulling up nutrients. All right, they're sort of like a filter for a water body. So, the loss of the wetlands, as well as the increased nutrients over the years, throw in some climate change and a few other factors, and now you have one of the likely components why you have such a bad HAB outbreak. Also, I had teams of scientists. I had them walk the entire lake, as well as the forks back in the spring. Some of the other observations we made, you have a number of outfalls that are flowing through the lake. Some are known and mapped. Some we don't quite know where the pipes go. Like I said, the lake really has very limited heading velocity. There's an absence of wetland vegetation, and the bottom of the lake seems to be pretty flat. That doesn't have a whole lot to do with HABs, but having a healthy fish community in the lake helps the overall lake ecology. So one of the things we also look to do is we put increase some of the fish habitat by putting more structure on the bottom. Or in ecology, it's called rugosity. That's called three-dimensionality. So if you're playing Scrabble, if you face your friends at another cocktail party, say, oh, I like the rugosity of your garden. So, and you'll probably get a look of, oh, thanks. Anyway, moving right along. I have no life, I'm sorry. So, gee, John, how do you build a wetland? How do you fix one? All right, so there's a couple ways of doing it. First, I'm going to work in the lower right-hand corner. My little laser pointer going to work on the screen. Nope. Okay. No. So you can see where the slope is right here. Right now, the lake is basically open water and it goes to the toe of that slope. Okay, right where this, right where you speak, yeah, right about here. The way you can build a wetland in shallow water is you go out a certain distance, 5 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet, and you take what's called a core log. And a core log is a woven, fibrous log about 20 inches in diameter. You then take the log, you put it on the bottom, and stake it down. And then between the log and the shoreline, you put a bunch of soil. Okay? You moderate that soil elevation, so it's pretty much sort of at the water level, maybe a little bit below, and then you plant the wetlands behind them, the wetland vegetation behind them. All right, so when I talk later about a wetland bench, that's what I'm talking about. There's also ways of stabilizing shorelines where you make little benches and you use boulders. You tend to use this in areas where there's more water velocity. And then there's something called a floating wetland, where you take a ring that floats, you put fabric on the bottom, you put soil, and then you put wetland vegetation. And what happens is the roots go through the mesh, they suck up the nutrients, and you have this little floating wetland. And normally you're anchored in place. All right? So when I talk about wetland benches, now you know hold on what that is, you know what a floating wetland is, and what a stabilized shoreline of benches are as well. So here's this is from a project we worked on. It's Route 128, I think it's in Connecticut. Sorry, don't get old. But anyway, photo in the upper right corner, that is the initial planting, which occurred in fall. All right, you can see the new soil we put down the core logs, put down the vegetation. You wait to the next spring, you also seed it as well. Everything starts to grow. And you can still see the core logs and some of the stakes, and you come back 5 years later, and it looks like it's been there for 1,000 years. All right? So that's an example of what these, when you put these wetland benches in, what you're going to see over a couple of year time period. Now, we've spoken quite a bit about wetlands. As Catherine also alluded to, we have to create some habitats. Hyde Park is, I believe, the second largest park by square area in the state of New York, if I'm not mistaken. Congratulations. And it reflects how parks were built World War II, prior World War II area. You often had these large scenic vistas, a couple trees, and then large expanses of mowed lawns, which is fine. The problem is, when you have a lot of development starts surrounding these parks, and more people driving in these parks, you have more nutrients building up. And what happens is when they hit these lawns, they tend to wash very quickly into the lake. Because the lawn doesn't really hold the nutrients as well as some habitats do. So what we're going to do, in addition to the marshes, is we're going to build some woodland habitats and put back some of the forest areas that used to be here. If you would have been here, if you would have sailed up the Niagara 300 years ago with the French explorers, all right? So we're going to put these little pocket woodlands and shrublands around the lake as well. We're still going to leave a lot of lawn areas, so you saw the fish start looking onto the lake. But there are going to make these woodland habitats. And fairly easy to do. If you look at the lower right-hand corner, you drive up with a rotary auger, you dig a hole, you put the tree in, you plant the tree. The white things that are along the trunks are deer and rodent guards, so you don't have deer and rodent, or German shepherds or whatever else, camouflaging your newly planted tree. And then that grows up over a couple of years and you have a nice shaded woodland. We're also going to be putting in bioswales, and they're going to be targeted in a bunch of locations. And a bioswale is simply a swale, usually with a wetland planting, and basically it's designed the sheet flow that's coming off the lawns. It's channeled into these bioswales where you have a lot of native vegetation, and often like pollinator vegetation, and things of that nature, where they can pull those nutrients out and put them to good use for some of the ecology of the region. And then finally, I notice the one fountain that's up there on the West Fork. We're also going to look at putting these solar-powered aerators. Aerator is just a big word for a bubbler. All right, if you have a fish tank, you probably have a bubble in it. Basically, it just pumps a lot of oxygen into the water, keeps the water moving, which can combat HABs. We're also I'm going to talk about educational nodes. We're going to have a number of those. And that's going to be anything from some informational placards like you have up there in the upper right-hand photo, to we're going to have a couple areas where we're probably going to have stations where school kids or college kids or whomever can actually mount scientific equipment and measure and monitor the lake and the water quality and things like that, and introduce that to maybe a classroom setting. And then finally, there's fish aggregating devices. I often want to say fish aggravating devices, but they're aggravating to put in. But anyway, these are some simple structures, but you put those in, and it's like catnip to the fish. They just take it, and you can increase the fish population. You can increase the rugosity, that word, and it has great benefits. All right. So, what are the proposed solutions? Have them back there on the boards. I'm going to take everybody through them. So the first, you have the Duck Island site. Duck Island's very pretty. Definitely a nice park-like setting. I don't know if anybody's taken a walk around the water around Duck Island. I was there earlier today. Could use a little TLC, in my opinion. But what we're going to do is we're going to do several things. We're going to be putting in some vegetated wetland benches. We're going to probably put in some aerators to get some water moving in that area. There's also that parking lot that's across the street from Duck Island. I'd like to turn that into more of a focal point so people can come to use the park, use Duck Island, but also have that parking lot work for the ecosystem. And what we're going to do is put in a version of a green parking lot where we're going to repave it, we're going to slope it so the runoff goes to bioswales that are all around it. And we're going to plant those bioswales with pollinated gardens and other like grasslands and other things like that. So, I'm just going to first go to design. Pointer. Okay. Well, there's going to be several. Is there a pointer? I went to Catholic grammar school. There was a nun that'd be a media stick right now being applied to me. Yeah, exactly.
I'll just stand here.
Oh, okay, great.
There we go. This is.
I went with a Wheel of Fortune, the president. That's what I feel like.
We all see you.
And a patent banner right there, right? Thank you. Once you can rest on the chair.
All down, but we're not near the torch side.
No, you can
you want me to still hold it?
No, it's up to you.
Yeah, that was nice. Yeah.
Teamwork. Anyway. Oh, yes. Yeah, I don't know. So we're gonna have this green parking lot up here, right, when we do the parking lot. And we'll have these bioswales that go around the parking lot. The parking lot will be pitched. And we'll have various habitats around it. When you come off the parking lot, we're gonna take down some of this, a lot of tree vegetation there, a lot of invasive species, or we're gonna take some of it down. We're gonna put a wildflower grassland right here, so you can see. It'll be a nice vista. It'll be a natural habitat. And then the rest of the shoreline, we're gonna put back a native forest. Through this, we're gonna have a nature trail that goes through it with these educational nodes, all right? And then we're gonna have a couple areas that are gonna go off to the shoreline where we'll have elevated viewing platforms. So if you're into bird watching and things like that, you can not only see forest birds, but then you can go into the lake and see what's swimming around in the lake. And then finally, around Porter's Dog Island and along the shoreline, we're gonna have these wetland benches and some floating wetlands. Okay, so that's number one.
Everyone,
I like that.
yeah. What are we on? Which site? Stadium.
Let's go to the stadium site.
Okay, I'll take both.
Yeah,
I can
Sure.
help you. I can help you.
Okay, we can do that.
So the stadium, so we're calling the stadium site. Basically, my apologies, it's maybe somewhat simplistic. I call it the stadium site, it's just, it's next to the
It's near the
stadium.
stadium. We're not creative here sometimes.
Right.
We have other things to.
But there's a few things that I'm noticing here. One, some of the shorelines, especially around the stadium site, are highly eroded. All right, I mean, in fact, there's that one little, looks like it's almost like a boat ramp or something right by the Robbins Bridge. You go to the end of it, it's like 3 feet straight down to the water. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put in some green walls, and I'll explain that in a second, to stop the erosion, and then put a wetland bench in front of it. All right? Also, some of the large adjacent lawn areas next to it, we can convert to some habitats. I'll explain that in a moment. And we're going to open up some other opportunities for public enhancements. So, just real quick, what do I mean by a green wall? Whoops. I'm going the wrong way. Typically, if you want to put a wall in to stop erosion, you can put in what they call like a bulkhead. You can take sheet piles and just drive it straight in. Very effective, but it doesn't have that natural feel. So one thing you can do is take logs with natural cuttings and stack them almost like a layer cake. And that'll form what's called a crib wall. And what you have is that it's very stable, but you have a green fascia to it, these shrubs that are coming out. The other thing, you also can do the same thing to the right with a stacked rock wall. Take large boulders, you stack them, but in between the boulders you have some soil and some small shrubs or grasses. And that'll grow out, and again you'll have this green face to it, but you'll still have a sturdy wall that'll hold your shoreline in place. So here, again, so we're gonna have bioswales around the parking lot. You're gonna come into the parking lot, and right in the corner, there's gonna be an elevated viewing platform so you can see everything. There'll be a large grassland around it, and there'll be a large wetland bench along the shoreline. You realize there's a fishing ban right now, although I think some people testing that ban that's coming in. What we are gonna do is we're gonna put a whole bunch of those fish structures right here, as well as we're going to put in a paved path that goes and terminates right at the end of the lake. So this way, once the lake gets cleaned up, if someone wants to come in and put a fishing pier there, or a kayak launch, or a combination, it's all set and the ADA compliant. Around the rest of the uplands, again, we're going to put in some natural forested areas, as well as some natural grassland areas, as well as this nature trail with the various educational nodes and the outlet. I also noticed that there's some workout areas over there, and there's some picnic benches, or there's a picnic bench that's still used. will have a designated area for that. So again, we're going to put a wall in, we're going to stop the erosion, we'll put a wetland bench in, combat the HABs, and some of these large lawn areas, we're going to convert to native habitats, one, for nutrient uptake, two, to increase the ecology of the area. A lot of the lawn areas to the south, all right?
It was so big we had to put it on 2 letters.
Yeah, they're all going to remain the same. So we still like that lawn, the feel of a park is still going to be there. But what we are going to do is extend that wetland bench along the shoreline, some 1,000 extra feet to the south. So that is the stadium site. And last but certainly not least, there's the East Fork site. So named because it's on the East Fork. And this site, it's first of all, I realize it's in the golf course. So we have many golfers. We scoured the entire golf course, and this site came to be the best because there is some unused space that parallels the fairways. So this won't interfere with anyone golfing. Well, unless you just slice,
Yeah.
and then you might, you'll be like canceling credit for the wall of the forest or something like that. But that being said, from an ecological standpoint, we're going to do a couple of things, and basically we're going to put a huge wetland along the shoreline. Up here in the north, where the shoreline's eroded, that's where we're going to probably put a combination of those rocks and little wetland planting benches. And then here is this area which kind of gets mowed once or twice a year. We're just going to turn this into a very large woodland. All right? We're going to have a bunch of those floating aerators going, the solar-powered aerators. And then finally, this little island here. It's not really neat. Just dotted, East Fork. Well, this little island. There's this little water channel around it where the water slows quite a bit. We can put some floating wetlands in that as well. That thought being, like I said, we'll dramatically increase the vegetation that contacts the water to pull out the nutrients. We're going to have a woodland that's going to reduce some of the sheet flow and also pull up some of the nutrients, as well as the floating wetlands and the aerators. And then finally, thank you very much, Catherine. The science thing works out, doesn't work out, Catherine. It was good work for
Like one of those
Yeah.
that spin the signs on the side of the road.
No, I would think bigger than that Hyde Park.
Oh, bigger. Oh, well.
Anyway,
Start somewhere.
so we have a couple. Like I said, I have a couple of questions. Certainly want to hear your input. If you want to mark up we have pens and paper back there. If you want to mark up these concepts, please do. Love to hear from you. Like I said, I have a couple of questions. Do you want to see more or less habitat? Something aquatic habitat features. Also, the one question I do want to ask folks is, in the channel that's around Duck Island, how do people feel about putting those solar-powered aerators there? Right? It'd be nice to have from a science standpoint, but I know from a visual standpoint, some people just want to see that nice glassy water.
Is there a way to camouflage them a little bit, or is it just, because I understand the reasoning for it.
Yeah. So we it's a really good question. I mean, could we build a little ring around them and plant it, or just stuff some? I've never done it, but I can't. But these are not industrial bubble. I mean, I can't believe we couldn't jerry rig something. So.
To your first question, though, I think the underlying portion, just looking at what's taking place throughout the state, like with the natural habitats, I think, for me personally, I like the look. I think it helps to increase the butterfly population, things that are like really going extinct, and that help to preserve life.
No.
I think it's an opportunity to just add back to the ecosystem and just, bring back what was here, because again, it was things were working until, it became industrialized, and just give back to nature.
I didn't know. That's why I got into this field. Thank you.
Just touching on a timeline before we start, milling around. So this is our first public meeting for this project. After this, we're going to take all your comments. John's team is going to run the project, give us some 60% designs, and then at the 90% timeline, which will probably be October, November, probably. We're going to invite the public back to review and see where these designs have gone. Those designs are definitely going to be updated from what we see today, because there's going to be a lot more engineering involved, ground truthing. We're going to be checking out like the bubblers, right? Like that kind of thing. We just need to know the materials. Then we'll submit it for permits. Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper already has $2 million in hand for implementation for these three projects. So we're not just designing projects so that they sit on the shelf. We are anticipating these projects to be a little bit more than that, so we're still going for additional funding, but we anticipate beginning construction early next year on these projects. So it's not going to be one of those pie in the sky kind of things. We really want this implemented. We want you to come back in November, and then you to come back in the spring and watch it all happen. So you're an integral part of that. So now we're just like opening up for comments. I can bring the board back up. We have posted notes.
And it's RUGOSITY, Augusta.
Yeah, you are all getting quizzed on that at the next public meeting.
Back in Niagara Falls High School last year in its entirety. I was just there talking to him last week about work to include some middle school programming in this coming year to support kids understanding what sorts of pathways are open to them and how environmental science might be something that they can see themselves in, right, in the future, and be stewards of the place that they live and the place that they walk by every day, right, coming home from the high school or from Gaskill. And also importantly, working with teachers, right, to create opportunities and empower them to use these natural assets as a living classroom. Right, and John mentioned just how we can create some infrastructure with these projects that not only encourages it, but enables the ability to do that in a really impactful way.
I have one more question for somebody else to stop. Is it possible to get a copy of the presentation?
Absolutely, it will be on our website in the next few days. Maybe not tomorrow, but Monday.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we would encourage you to share this, right, with folks who were not able to be here today, because we would love to be able to solicit as much input as we can, particularly like John and Catherine were acknowledging, we're early on in the design, right? I think it's also cool to think about that if you walk over by the Rose Garden, you can see an example of a mature living shoreline that we put in 2017.
Yeah, so about 6
So about
years.
yeah, and that is I think a beautiful example of a mature ecological restoration project that we have stewarded.
And if you did not sign in, well, I think most of you signed in, but make sure you put your email address, because during the 90%, I might want to make sure that I contact you guys to let you know to stop on by, or at least check out our website. And then we have some educational information up there, which has our website on it, which will link you to these design plans and the recording of tonight's presentation as well. But yeah, just sharing it with everyone you know. Even if it's mostly if it's that person who just loves lawn, right? Like we want to bring them in too. We want to capture everybody in the community and get their ideas. We appreciate that.
Have you reached out to neighbors along the area and everything? Other than having a general community, have you like flyers or something so I can know what's going on?
So if you go back to where the parking lot area is, that's where the closest neighbors are. I did speak to one of the neighbors
This is one of them. This is one of them.
Okay.
That one, yeah, so the green parking lot. So, Second Street and then Michigan Ave, I've talked to a couple of them just in that parking lot area. Mostly because they saw surveying out there and they were concerned about what might happen. So when I talked to them about this, they were pretty excited, but they mentioned that it's used a lot during, like, what's that? Yes, yeah, it's pretty well parked up, so, any of that, and even putting some educational signs in the parking lot, because people are using that, and then going to the stadium, people will be able to get more of a feel of what we're doing there as well, so,